Good morning. As you mentioned, we are in County 001, that is Mombasa County, that is going to be playing host to the 32nd IEK convention. That is all futuristic, so to speak, in as far as the theme of this convention is concerned. How does the future roadmap of IEK look like? So just to put a perspective on where we are, that is how it's looking outside. As we mentioned, we are at the beachfront. This is Paradise, Pride in Paradise, this in Shanzu, Mombasa. The temperatures outside currently are around 27 degrees Celsius. And we are expecting that this is going to get hotter as we proceed into the day. And that's why we have made it inside, indoors, as we mentioned, to the Arabuko Hall, where I'm joined by two gentlemen who are going to paint the picture of what to expect in the convention. This is going to take a week-long duration, where we're expecting not only government representation, but also industry players. We're looking at engineers themselves, private sector, as well as researchers, to see how we are looking like in as far as the engineering space is concerned and what is in the offing going forward into the future. So joining me on my immediate right is none other than the first Vice President, that is Engineer Harrison Keter. Thank you very much for making time. And last but not least, on my far end, to my right, is none other than the Honorary Secretary, IEK, Engineer Jackton Mwembe. Karibu sana.
Asante sana.
You know, when we say it is hot and we see a gentleman in a suit, they may not believe me, but hey, it is very hot. But that aside, so excuse us if you see us sweating. But yeah, it's a hot seat, so to speak, because we have to set the tone of this particular convention, gentlemen. So we'd want to look at the issues of, let's start off with the fact that this year's convention focuses on engineering the future, the roadmap for Kenya. So from your perspective, Engineer Harrison Keter, yes, what are the three top pillars IEK is prioritizing to ensure that engineers meaningfully influence national development?
Thank you for having me, Regina. Once more, my name is Engineer Harrison Keter, the first Vice President, Institution of Engineers of Kenya. The 32nd IEK Convention holds a special place for the engineering fraternity. And the theme has been well chosen to reflect what the engineers need to focus on. Engineering the future, the roadmap for Kenya. We want this particular convention and the conversation therein to inform the roadmap for development in Kenya. So basically, we're going to be looking at the key priorities the government has set in place, including infrastructure, innovation, and then we'll have the larger theme of engineering capacity building, which now prepares the engineers into the implementation mode of the roadmap that has been set by government. And it's a special place because we're also having benchmarks, and these would come in the form of international delegates. We have about 32 of them from over 10 countries, including Russia, Ghana, Zambia, and many of other African countries, just for us to be able to benchmark and see how we can contribute as engineers into the conversation. We now don't want to be bystanders, but now we want to be at the center of it, setting the stage.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You want engineers to be at the center stage when it comes to infrastructure and also all other developments within the country. Exactly. Now, we've heard robust sessions with government, public sector transformation, engineering procurement. So what gaps does IEK see in policy or regulation that needs urgent attention, to strengthen the project delivery in Kenya? Engineer Mwembe.
Thank you very much, Regina, for having me. Again, Engineer Jackton Mwembe. I'm the Honorary Secretary to the Institution of Engineers of Kenya. And we are happy to be at the coast once again after the 31st convention. This is the second IEK International Convention, which attracts global players and also the local players, both private and the public sector. Based on the objectives of Institution of Engineers of Kenya, we see so much that government is actually doing, and we can be able to appreciate the extent to which they have done. However, you've mentioned about the gaps, and these gaps in the policy are so key that if not taken care of in good time, we'll realize that most of the projects that are being implemented, infrastructure project actually, will not be able to take off as required. And this includes like issues dealing with the procurement. The procurement policy is one of the key areas because it's the beginning of the implementation of a project. So some areas in terms of engagement, how do you engage even the professionals from the inception? How do you procure them? How do you fund the infrastructure project and the mega projects that are happening in this country? Do we have proper framework for the PPP? You heard the president talk about issues dealing with roads during the nation address. That so many projects are going to be implemented in this nation, but in terms of the frameworks that are there in terms of PPPs and engagement of the locals, those needs to come out in a policy document to ensure that we safeguard the interest of the country while we play global. So that is just one of the areas in terms of procuring the players or the implementers of these particular projects. We also have policies that govern the engagement of the local professionals, including specifically we talk about our engineers, because engineers have been left out or they've been escorting the international community or international experts. We want policies that will be able to incorporate and bring on board substantively the role of local engineers into the into the implementation of our projects, because we have the capacity, we've been trained in the right way, and we believe our engineers can still be able to move forward and lead with the experts, probably the foreign expert being part and parcel of that as Kenyans take the lead into the future. That's why this year's convention is about the roadmap for Kenya, and that roadmap must include personnel. Thank you.
I like how you have candidly put that, the roadmap has to include personnel, and you have highlighted that particular issue. It's that at the procurement aspect and also the enforcement of these particular policies that have already been laid down. Now, there are continued concerns, about stalled or poor quality infrastructure projects. It has been going on for years. What role can IEK or is IEK playing, to enhance professionalism, oversight, and ethical conduct among engineers? Engineer Katera.
Okay, thank you, Regina. Yeah, it is true, and it's in public domain that we have seen many stalled projects. The gaps have actually been misrepresented sometimes. Sometimes the finger has been pointed at the engineers. But then when you look at the process itself, the process would have other activities or scopes that not fall within the purview of the engineer. For instance, the engineers would do the design and their documents would be used to do the approvals. How come that the same project would be implemented without the same engineers whose credentials were used in the approvals? So there's a gap in the process of supervision of the same, and in the process of licensing, or what I would call rather the supervision from the implementing agencies. Because you can't use an engineer's credentials and then later on have a different person do it. And then when they come in, you want to play the engineers. So what does IEK play? Now, IEK has played a key role in capacity building of engineers. We have various training programs aimed at capacitating our engineers and actually informing them of their rights and what they can do. But besides that, IEK have been a strong advocate of what needs to be done right. But then now for this to happen right, we require partnership between IEK and government agencies. Specifically, there is a particular role that can be given to IEK that would not only sort out the problem, but also create employment for engineers. And this is the role of inspection. Inspection of these projects. the counties definitely do not have the capacity in terms of personnel. But here, we have thousands of engineers without jobs. And this is where IEK can come in. Besides the engineers, IEK has presence in all the counties in Kenya in terms of offices and engineers in those particular places. These are the people who can actively take part in actually supervision of projects and ensure that what is happening is right. And besides that, there is need to have policies that would ensure that proprietors, business people, construction companies, irrespective of who the owners are, employ professional and qualified engineers and engineering technicians in their fields. Then that is the time you can hold engineers accountable.
There are those who argue, and I would represent them as a devil's advocate in this case, that our engineers are too expensive, you know, to have working on these particular projects. Like if someone is constructing a house, they'd rather just do it out of so-and-so built my friend's house, I will use them, whether they're registered or not. You people are being said, within the particular value chain, are too expensive. Let's hear from Mwembe first, then you come back, as you're charging to respond to me.
Okay.
Mwembe, what do you, is our capacity, are we too expensive, too exorbitant in our engineering field?
Regina, what is expensive?
It's like asking me what is affordable.
Exactly. You know, when we are talking about development, we are not talking about cheap thing. You are putting money into, it's a capital investment where millions and or billions of shillings are put into a project that has got cost, has got safety, has got also timelines. And therefore, the only person who can be able to help you in that implementation to achieve these goals, especially on the safety of the property and safety of the people, is the engineer or the professional.
The professional.
Exactly.
So there is no price too high for professionals.
There is no price too high for that because it has anything to do with life. There is a saying that I like talking about here, that we have other professionals that can bury their mistake, but an engineer cannot bury the mistake. Because if there is a road that is there and it's killing people, it is killing people. It will always be there. For a building that collapses, it collapses and it kills people. If there's an error in it, that error, you live with it, you cannot bury it unless that building collapses. So a professional will be able to take you off that particular state and give you value for money.
Value for money.
Yes.
You are agreeing?
Yeah, thank you, Regina.
Value
That's
for
really
money.
value for money. However, just to put into perspective, I would like you to just paint the picture of the cost of foreign experts globally and what our engineers are paid.
All right.
Without even going far, definitely
The
we
comparison
have
is
comparatively cheap labor. But then there's what we call engineering the total cost of ownership. The total cost of ownership actually refers to not just the initial cost of owning a property, an equipment, or whatever it is, but the long-term cost you are going to incur. And in this case, when we talk about cheap, some of the costs that are usually incurred by investors are the following. Very huge operations and maintenance costs. For instance, if you are talking of a road, if you do cheap, within 2 weeks, within 1 month, you have potholes, you need to do it. Then you have issues of collapsed buildings. I don't know which engineer can be equivalent to the cost of a collapsed building. Then look at the deaths, the safety that goes into it. No,
there's no
our
price
engineers
to
are quite affordable.
Now, since we're still talking about money matters, is that the National Treasury has been cited and documented having, brought forth new models for infrastructure financing. So how is the Kenyan engineering fraternity sector ready to engage in PPPs, blended finance, and alternative funding models? What do you think about these particular proposals? Keter, yes.
Yeah, thank you, Regina. Again, financing is a big challenge globally, especially infrastructure financing. And in this 32nd IEK convention, we have a topic specifically targeting governance and policy governance and financing, of infrastructure projects. And we are looking at now new models and innovative models. And we have templates globally, and PPPs is one of the models that has been applied in very many places globally. And as engineers, definitely we know this is the way to go. And the reason is simple. We do not have the resources as a country in terms of hard cash to do that. We may have the raw materials, but then we need to procure technology and expertise, which we do not have. We need to have immediate funds to actually buy financing models. Then we need to look at ways of how can we make these PPPs cheaper for Kenyans. And one simple way is looking at the human capital. We can buy the equipment and the technology, but when it comes to the human capital, Kenya has enough engineers and experts to partake in the business of construction, so that in this financing, itemize the aspect and the cost of human capital, and that becomes our contribution, right, as a country. We also have to look at, with these PPPs, where are the raw materials coming from? We have to actually ensure that we make sure that a good percentage come from within the country. And
source raw materials. Engineer Mwembe, what do you have to say in regard to that, to lower the cost of these particular projects, and also to just ensure that we buy Kenya, build Kenya?
I want to agree with Engineer Keter.
Yes.
So we have policies in this country that talks about local content. And that should actually, I know it used to talk about 30%, it has 40%, it actually should be 50%. We cannot say that we lack professionals. So they are there. We need to take over with time, because we cannot keep on talking about foreigners coming into the country. We need to grow, and with time, approach 100%. So in terms of local content and PPPs, I think that one I agree with fully. Materials, Kenya is rich with so many of these natural resources. Let us have all the materials coming from the country. If we have to value add onto anything, let it be done. We would like to have the international community coming to this Kenya, establishing themselves in this country, so that we can have within the industry where value addition is happening, we have Kenyans being part of it. We have Tigal, we have these industries to ensure that they value add to the natural resources, so that this same material can be used for our own development. So if we look at the future and we bring it on board such kind of investors, then they cannot be manufacturing from other countries, then we import. That is we are undoing, and we are actually shooting ourselves. So I think as the president also mentioned, that is the Honorable William Ruto, that should be one of the areas that he should be able to focus on, local establishment of industries, to ensure that we absorb our own young people and young professionals that are coming out of the universities and the colleges. And PPPs should be able to come out clearly, whether it is manufacturing industry or implementation of projects. They should be able to bring on board, as First BP has mentioned, itemized and clear direction in terms of that engagement. It's not only on paper. In Kenya, it has been happening on paper, where a CV is, you share your CV, it's being used by an international or a foreign company, then you are kicked out of the project. And monitoring should be there to ensure that this is implemented across to the end of such project and end of the life of the project, so that we are sure our people are actually being engaged, because on the ground things are different.
But then what does the regulator do then in this particular space? Because what I'm hearing from you is, well, in theory the policy looks very good, but then the actualities do not match the reality, and the perceived future as we're looking at. So what is a gap, on the regulation and monitoring? Keter, is it a capacity issue or is it a lack of willingness? What is the issue?
Thank you, Regina. To actually do regulation enforcement, you need resources. And that's really very, very important. So that if we talk about, say, the Engineers Board of Kenya, for instance, I don't think the Engineers Board of Kenya has sufficient staff and financial resources to be able to do the kind of regulation implementation. And actually is to ensure that the board is resourced adequately so that it is able to do its mandate. And I'll give you another example where, for instance, this has been able to be enforced. When it comes to, I work in the energy sector, I work for KenGen, and we handle a lot of huge infrastructure projects. One of the things we do is, as we require the CVs of the participants, the experts, various experts who are going to participate in projects, you cannot change a participant without express authorization from the client. In this case, KenGen, for instance, if you had given us the CV of an expert A, you cannot just change A and bring B or D at will. That has to go through the same vetting process that the other went through, including verification from EBK, where EBK now has the mandate to confirm from the original country from which the particular expert comes from. And this brings me to an important concept which just happened the other day, and this is the mutual recognition, where Kenya engineers now have become provisional members of the Washington Accord, which is going to facilitate mobility. To be able to enforce this, you need resources. And these resources includes financial resources, but also human capital. So if funds are availed to EBK, then EBK is going to employ engineers. Again, we are sorting out the unemployment problem. Right. So the key is implementation.
Implementation, so we need resources. We'll be having a moment with Engineer Margaret Ogai in the course of this particular convention. Maybe she can put into perspective exactly where the gaps are from a regulator point of view. Now, this particular convention has themes around talent development. We're talking about AI and multi-skilling. So how is IK preparing, young and mid-career engineers for a future where soft skills and cross-disciplinary knowledge is also very essential? Let's start off with Engineer Mwembe. I can see you nodding. You're the Honorary Secretary of IK. What are you doing in this particular regard?
Yeah, thank you very much, Regina. Once again, the future is the life of a country and life of an organization.
Welcome back. We are on the prelude of the 32nd REK convention happening here in Mombasa. And the conversation this morning is, what should you expect from this particular convention? What are the thematic areas being discussed? And what is the role, of the young engineers within this particular space? That is where we left it off, and that is where we're picking up. Now, industry has not been responsive per se, to the young engineers who need practical experience. Maybe that's the reason why a majority are dropping off and not, working within the engineering space.
RIBAS, which is something in the build environment civil engineers, and then we've partnered with a company which is dealing with materials engineering and training in that area. We had a training on artificial intelligence for engineers, which we partnered with the Chinese Academy of Science and Technology, and the training was offered by trainees from the Open University of Kenya. And this is really a very interesting concept where now the same thing we want to get foreign experts from, we can get it locally here. I can tell you the training was well received by members, but apart from that also, there's a big role IEK is doing, which is actually linking the industry, academia, and the students. It is one area we have really focused on to ensure that we are able to bring these people together through forums, through programs, that they engage and talk and see how best they can work together. Now, if you look at the perspective of some of the foreign nations that have developed, the industry have a very crucial role that they play in capacity building and actually research. They specifically fund training and research in their areas of operation. If you are, for instance, in the build environment, you would have the cement manufacturers, funding research in new cement properties and material properties. In Kenya, we do not have that. Again, like you said, engineering is a practical course. People need to do something about it. And this is where we call our, industry to come and help, attach the students. And as they attach the students, they need to do something that is fair to them. These are students, they have no money. Please provide them with some basic stipend just to cover their basic needs, housing, transport, and all that. But then if you come again to now, how we are enhancing this. We are actually profiling success stories. And in this convention, we have examples of what has happened. And I'll take the Kengen experience. Kengen has a geothermal training center. And this is how it has been able to be very successful. Previously, we had exploration and drilling for geothermal being done by foreign experts, very expensive foreign experts. But because of setting up geothermal training center, Kengen has been able to train its engineers and scientists to do the same things.
Right.
And it has gone ahead now to help train the region in the same space. If we can do that and replicate it in different other sectors,
it would be
we will actually meet
at the middle.
Yeah.
Now, the employment gap is a challenge within this particular space. Now, we had the 10,000 engineers march for employment, and that's the conversation around unemployment and re-employment of engineers. So how does IEK, work with government as well as private sector and counties, to expand these opportunities? Engineer Mwembe, we've heard what they're doing in terms of scalability in capacity, but what else can we do to bring all these entities? Engineer Mwembe.
Thank you very much. One of the areas, I want to start from where we started from the regulator. Yes. I think they have a program that they are running, the graduate mentorship program that has been running, and that graduate mentorship program usually has a number that it has been capped to that particular number because of finances and funding. So as IEK, what we are looking at is to ensure that we engage in terms of how even the regulator can be empowered in terms of funding, so that that number can be able to grow from what it is now to probably, getting to 1,000 or something like that. Because these are graduates that need to be trained so that when they go to the market, they understand what is happening there. The other thing that also we need to look at to resolve this issue in capacity building and unemployment is to ensure that when we come to the infrastructure project, there must be allocation, allocation of funds to train graduates. As you can find, like NEMA usually has a percentage that they charge for the project. Why can't we have this in each and every government project that will be able to absorb from 100 to 200 graduates? So that they are engaged in this particular project throughout their life. Most of the projects are running 3 years, 2 years, 3 years. By the time they're hitting the 3rd year, they will have gotten enough training such that when they are moving from graduate state to a professional state, then they at least have the projects that they have done. So it's a two-pronged thing, that they gain the experience and at the same time, they can be able to transit from being a graduate to professional. And IK also works closely with the private sector to ensure that there's partnership. I think First BC has mentioned. And these, we usually promote that engagement with the young people to ensure that you can be able to absorb 5 to 10 or so within a particular sector. You'll be able to absorb so much of these engineers out of the streets, and at least they'll have something to help them run their lives. And we are looking still forward to ensure that the scheme of service, which we have discussed with the government over a period of time, because this one talks about the mode of payment, even the amount to be paid to engineers at the entry level. Currently, it's at 25,000 shillings. That is, it's called a stipend. But life, life has continued to be difficult, and this can be able to be improved further. So the continuous engagement with the government will enable us also to improve on the living standards of the young people. So we continue to engage that our members who are also experiencing or going through hardship can also be able to get the allowances, that hardship allowances. I think this is a very critical policy that needs to be passed so that engineers as professionals also can be able to benefit from the government initiatives. And IK is actually pushing for that.
Engineer Mwembe, before I let you proceed, is that we want our sound engineer to work on your sound so that we can get back with this conversation. So now let me engage Harrison Keter on the next engineer, Harrison Keter. Now, we know that government, has been very vocal, and it aims to drive industrial growth. Through energy parks, we're looking at climate smart agriculture, transport corridors, and manufacturing hubs. So as it is, that is what we intend to do. Yes. But would want to also understand what are the biggest, engineering capacity gaps standing in the way of this particular ambition, and how can we, correct this in the short term? Because we're already in this particular space. We're already talking about over 1 million who are staring at starvation. That is something we need to address. Yes. We're looking at poor infrastructure, a lot of traffic, collapsed buildings, We are already in this particular space. So in the short term, how do we address that?
Okay, thank you, Regina. I think it's not just enough to wish and talk. We actually have to walk the talk. And I want to laud government program in certain areas. For instance, we have 100% transition from pre-primary to primary school, 100% transition from primary to secondary, and probably something close to 100 also from secondary to universities and tertiary colleges. But what percentage do we have for transition from university or tertiary colleges to the job market? And are we intentional about it? Do we even mention that we need this kind of transition? I think the answer is no. I'll give the example of engineers. How can we have just 500 engineers being attached on the graduate internship program? This is a definite number. We know every year 5,000 engineering students graduate. Why don't we plan to absorb all of them? Now, that is just one of it on the previous aside. Come to the industrial parts. I don't think the problem we have is that of capacity. And this, I insist, I refuse to accept that. The problem we have for industrialization in the country is other factors. And now I want to mention them.
Yeah, break it down. What factors?
One of them is the cost of electricity. Investors or industries will move to places where the cost of business is low. And the cost of electricity in this country is high. But then, what is causing this high cost of electricity? It's not the cost of production. KenGen gives power at very cheap rates.
There are those who would argue with you and say the cost of evacuation of power is quite expensive, but you're within the value chain. Maybe you can take this moment to actually explain, because there's been that current debate, and there's also a proposal to increase, the cost of...
Just to confirm that, you need to look at your power bill. Probably close to 50% is cost of taxes and levies. That is where the catch is. It's not in the actual cost of power. But then we can recover these taxes and levies differently if we brought down the cost of power and spur industries. We would have many industries to tax and to give more money that will plug into this deficit we have in terms of financing. And I want to use the example of industrial parks. I'm particular about industrial parks because at the moment we are running a project in Olkaria as KenGen on industrial parks, where we have provided, the government has actually provided preferential treatment or tariffs for investors who wish to invest in an industrial park, including lower tariffs on electricity, including tax reliefs, for some period, and incentives.
All right.
That is what we need to do as a country to be able to attract this. Then we look at the other thing.
No, I'd have to cut you short at that point. We are expected to hand over to State House any minute from now. So I'll give you one word, 30 seconds before I hand it over to my colleague Vivian to just bring this to a close so that we can be ready to hand over to the rest of the programming in State House. We're expecting that President William Ruto is going to be or rather inviting and hosting the Malaysian Prime Minister anytime from now. So Engineer Keter, 30 seconds, Engineer Mwembe, 30 seconds. Expectations of this particular convention.
Thank you, Regina. For this particular convention, I expect engineers to interact with fellow engineers, share experiences, and most importantly, pick out something that can be implemented in their places of work and run away with it.
All right, engineers to speak to engineers and chart the way forward. Engineer Mwembe.
Thank you, Regina. Once again, it's the 32nd convention, international convention, and we are having the international community represented here. We need to see how we can be able to implement the partnerships that we have had with the international community and the local community, the private sector, so that we can be able to absorb the young people and also enhance the capacity of the existing firms to ensure that also they can be able to absorb. That employment is a key issue in this country, and that is what outcome we want, that this convention can be able to absorb, at least address the issue. Partly, it's something is a long term, but partly let us address the issue of unemployment in the country by engaging engineers in everything that we do. Thank you.
All right. Thank you, gentlemen. That is Engineer Jackton Mwembe, who is a Honorary Secretary, IEK. That industry has to work with academia to ensure that we address the issue of unemployment and build capacity within the engineering sector. First Vice President, that is Engineer Harrison Keter, is conversations to happen between engineers and chart the way forward. That's just but a quick summary of what to expect as this 32nd IEK convention commences here in Mombasa. The main day is tomorrow. We're expecting various stakeholders, including government representation and academia, as well as the young professionals within this particular value chain, to have a conversation and chart the way forward. Basically, the roadmap of Kenya, looking into the future when it comes to matters of engineering.